Our next speaker is well known around Durham for many years. Lloyd Schmeidler was the executive director of the urban ministries downtown. And one of the roles he's played probably under the radar ever since he's been here has been kind of the leading face, I would say, or if not, or a leading face for Bread for the World in Durham. And he's the most knowledgeable person I know to speak on this and how this organization gets congregations and individuals to lobby our federal government on issues that affect low-income people, especially with regard to hunger issues. So, Lloyd.
Thank you, Tom. You're very kind. I think Tom could be doing this presentation and doing a better job than I probably will do. Bread for the World, for those who may not know, is a collective Christian voice urging our nation's decision makers to end hunger at home and abroad. We've got about 70,000 members across the country. We advocate with Congress, and this year we're also advocating with our president, encouraging them to work together, as difficult as it might be, to work together to end hunger. I want to share Bread for the World has wonderful resources. They've also got a great website like ncchurches.org, simplybread.org can open up another world of information. So I'm going to share several videos and then actually invite you to do some advocacy in the few minutes I have with you. So let's see here. Hunger is very real. There's a new documentary. There's a new documentary that just came out on March 1st. It was actually previewed on public television. That evening, one of the directors was interviewed with Ray Suarez, and it was great.
It's a problem that people are ashamed of acknowledging.
It's very humiliating.
It's tiring.
What are we going to do?
This generation will live sicker and die younger than the parents' generation.
Hunger is right here in the United States.
And the problem is getting worse.
The reason people are going hungry is not because of a shortage of food, it's because of poverty. 1 out of every 2 kids in the United States at some point will be on food assistance.
I was one of those kids that was hungry. It messes with you.
The average food stamp benefit is $3 a day. There are people who are living on that, and you really can't.
If you have a limited amount of money, you're going to spend it on the cheapest calories you can get, and that's processed foods.
My dream is to go to college, but I can't tell my kids, I'll make sure you guys eat in 2 years. I'm struggling to even feed my kids every day. Put that in there. Okay, that was a bad idea.
As many as 50 million Americans rely on charitable food programs.
I haven't received a pay raise in 4 years, and what I used to spend on a month in groceries now gets me about 2 weeks.
It's amazing how the need has increased. Charity is a great thing, but it's not the way to end hunger. We're weakening our nation.
I don't really know what to do.
Was a documentary in 1968 that put hunger on the national agenda.
Regular Americans rose up and demanded a modern nutrition assistance safety net, which helped us almost end hunger entirely by the late 1970s.
It showed that public policy could work, political will could work to make a difference in our country.
There's probably 600, 700 chefs here, all really committed to helping this problem that we have with childhood obesity and hunger.
We're working to make sure that families have access to quality, affordable food.
It's so good.
There's a lot of education that needs to happen around what is healthy food.
Give your ideas for change, for the healthy life of your kids.
We all have a stake in this.
About patriotism, really. If another country was doing this to our kids, we would be at war. And it doesn't have to be that way.
So hopefully we agree that hunger is one of the issues that is exacerbated by poverty. There's a wonderful video. I'm actually going to pass for it. It's from Place at the Table, just in the interest of time, but it shows a fourth, fifth grader in a rural town in Colorado who is hungry when she gets to school, and we wonder why our children can't learn. And she describes beautifully how when she's at school, she fantasizes about food, and she says, I see my teacher as a banana and my classmates are apples. And so I'm focusing on food and not focusing on learning the history lesson of the day, right? We've talked in this series about the realities of poverty, and certainly hunger is one of those issues. Bread for the World specifically organizes in congregations to write letters to our Congress people in Washington, D.C. This next video is a very brief description of that process.
Bread for the World is a collective Christian voice urging our nation's decision makers to end hunger at home and abroad. Through grassroots advocacy, Bread members win real change for hungry and poor people.
What Bread for the World allows you to do is to help change a system so that millions of families will be able to make a living and put food on their table themselves.
Bread for the World members write letters to Congress, visit their legislators, and educate their communities on how to end hunger.
It's a wonderful way of being of service to the God that I believe in.
I can use my voice and my influence as my member of Congress to really make a difference.
Writing a letter to my congressman is a way to share the good news that God cares about poor and hungry people.
For the cost of a stamp, you can literally change somebody's life.
Hundreds of millions of people are escaping from hunger and poverty, thanks in part to the efforts of Bread for the World. To learn how you can help, visit www.bread.org or call 1-800-82-BREAD.
So Bread encourages people to write letters, to advocate with our national legislators. David Beckman spoke briefly in that video, and he received with joy luck from Heifer International in 2010. He received the World Food Prize, which is equivalent to the Nobel Peace Prize for its significance in terms of food and agriculture. Bread for the World has won a lot of victories. In the current political climate in our country, we are trying to hold on to the victories that have been won over the years and are continuing to encourage our national leaders that in the budget negotiations and the efforts to address the deficit and the fiscal problems of this country, the needs of poor people in our country and the needs of hungry people cannot be forgotten, and we should not balance the budget on the backs of hungry and poor people. We're having some success with that so far. Many of the cuts that have been proposed by some legislators have not come to pass. Before I move into the final video I'm going to show, I want to share this credo from Bread. It's really powerful. I've been leading a small group, but a very faithful group of Bread for the World advocates here in Durham since about the year 2000. We meet monthly. We'll talk hopefully about that as well in a moment. But over the last several years since Bread published this credo, we've started our meetings with this because we find it a very powerful message about why we gather together and write letters, and I think perhaps it expresses something for us tonight here as to why we've gathered to reflect on poverty and our Christian response to it. We are moved by God's grace in Jesus Christ to work for justice for hungry people. They may be in the next house or in the next country. No matter where they live, They are our neighbors, and we have the power to help. Charity alone is not enough. We must urge our government to make fair decisions so struggling families can provide for their children. We must write personal letters and emails to Congress and engage our churches, campuses, and other organizations. We must change laws and structures that allow poverty to persist. When we turn our faith into action, God uses our voices. Again and again, we win help and opportunity. 2 fish become many. 5 loaves become enough to feed a multitude. God is moving in our time to end hunger, and we are part of this great liberation. It is our mission to help our neighbors wherever they live. They are hungry, and we are bread for the world. So a final video exploring in a little bit longer, in 5 or 6 minutes, Bread for the World's campaign this year.
Thank you, Tom.
I have to admit, just up front, it's so hard to talk about my grandmother because she was just such an amazing person in my life. In '89, she retired and started a new job of raising my brother and I. And it was living with her where I saw what true Christian meant. The selflessness, the sacrifices that she would make, not just for her family, but for anybody.
Being a Christian to me is advocating, is reaching out, extending the hand. If someone is being thrown from a mountain, the church is very good at asking, can I help you? Can I heal your wounds? However, the church also needs to ask who is launching them from the mountaintop. Why are these individuals suffering?
My grandmother struggled after her husband died to make ends meet. She would often say, I've got the same bills on half the salary. And that's a reality, not just for her, but for millions of people in this country.
Elderly, we thank you that we have witnesses like Mother Teresa.
I come from a very poor family. My dad went up to the 3rd grade, and till this day, my dad does not know how to read and write. He had to go work in the fields of Puerto Rico. So I was a WIC baby. I remember receiving the big cheese blocks. And when there was no food at home, it was white rice with fried eggs. And those were our basic staple meals for many days.
The apostles were performing many miraculous signs and wonders among the people. And all the believers were meeting regularly at the temple in the area known
when I was in Southeast Arkansas, so I had set up this meeting with all these local pastors. And there was consensus in the room about what the reality was. People are struggling, people are hungry, there are no jobs. Everyone pretty much agreed, yeah, we've got to apply pressure to our congressmen and women, to our senators, to our state legislatures, to do more for hungry and poor people in our state. What perplexed me was, why is there not consensus to do it?
I'm just asking you to sign a letter today.
Once a year, we emphasize the offering of the letters that Bread for the World has. These letters are sent to Congress, giving them the message that they have to look at the budgets because we cannot just leave on the outskirts, on the margins, those that are hungry and those that are poor. It is important that the president figure out a budget to sustain these programs.
My grandmother expected myself and my brother to live a life according to the gospel message that she had brought us up in. You do right by people, you love people. She would always say, everybody deserves a good morning, everybody. One of my favorite scriptures is Micah, the 6th chapter, verse 8. Oh, what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love mercy, and walk humbly with God. And so my hope is that we have a government that puts love thy neighbor at the center of our legislative agendas, Democrat or Republican. We have a responsibility and obligation to our country and our world to make sure that those people who don't have the resources that we've been so blessed with, that we can give them a hand up.
So, a time for advocacy. Bread for the World for the first time this year is encouraging the president to do more, to use his office to address hunger. We have a petition. I'm going to invite you to consider signing it. It says, Dear President Obama, we are praying that God grant you courage, strength, and wisdom as the leader of our nation. During the recent election campaign, you promised to earnestly address hunger and poverty. We commend you for your commitment, and we urge you to make it a top priority for your administration. We share the prayer of David in Psalm 72. May he defend the cause of the poor of the people and give deliverance to the needy. In this spirit, we ask that you set a goal and work with Congress on a plan to end hunger in the United States and abroad. This will be a major undertaking requiring strong leadership, bipartisan cooperation, and concerted effort over many years. We are confident, however, that with God all things are possible. You can count on our continued prayers. Thank you. So there's room on each of these pages for 6 signatures. So James, could you help pass these around? Also, this year's theme is a place at the table, and we don't have time to write a letter after, as part of our evening together here, but there is a sample letter on this bulletin insert, and you don't have to make a commitment to write a letter as you go home, but we encourage you to do so. There's a sample letter and, again, kind of an overview of a place at the table this year's campaign. Our Congress people in Durham, for many of us, changed. Some are fortunate enough to continue to have David Price as their congressman. Others are also fortunate to have G.K. Butterfield. He's my new congressman, and I'm getting acquainted with him. Got a nice letter back from him from a recent letter. So we'll distribute these, and you can take these with you and learn more about a place at the table. Check out the movie as well if you can, and visit bread.org. Also, if you're at all interested in, if you're not a member of Bread and want to become a member of Bread for the World, we'll offer you a free 1 year's membership. If you're interested in that, there's some sign-up sheets here at the table. And also, you can be in touch with me if you want to join our monthly letter writing group. Milton, real quick.
Is a place at the table showing anywhere around here? I haven't been able to find it.
It just was released on March 1st. I'm not aware that it's showing anywhere in our area yet. It can be downloaded, I believe, off of iTunes or Amazon.com.
You can rent it.
You can rent it, right. Okay, so it's like $9.99, I think, to rent it or something like that. Okay, good question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lloyd. And Lloyd has agreed to stay later for answering questions, so we'll have time for answering those questions.